Welcome again, everyone, to our weekly segment where we discuss KU and K-State sports live from the Eddie Robertson suite here in the Capital Journal. Matt Galloway, KU writer, Ken Corbett, our K-State writer, and we've finally done away with football, at least at KU, and K-State with a bowl game left to go. Matt, probably no surprise when you saw that statement put out by the athletic director, Shane Zinger, right after the game, moments after the game at Oklahoma State last week. And obviously we pretty much knew David Beatty was coming back regardless, but I don't know what you make of the statement and the Jayhawks' last game.
Yeah, K-State ending the regular season with a bang and KU ending with what I basically said a whimper. But you're right, seconds after the final whistle, I go to post the tweet of the final score, and right as it happened, and we get an email in our inbox, the people that cover the team, that's a statement from athletic director Shane Zinger, which, anytime you get that, that's always, a bit of a heart-stopping moment because you never know exactly what's going to be in that email. But as expected, that was kind of a vote of confidence again for David Beatty, basically saying, the term, you used the term not acceptable to describe this football season, but said that KU leadership still believes he's the right man going forward. That was his 33rd loss against, in his 3 years. He's 3-33. So I think, everybody understood that this would be quite a rebuilding project that David Beatty would have to undertake. But I asked him after the game, I said, if somebody had come to you and said, this is how this season is going to play out, your third year, would you have considered that at the time, the worst case scenario? And he kind of danced around that and said he wasn't quite sure. That was a very realistic question, and which I agree with. I don't think we've invented time travel yet, but I asked Joe Deneen later the same question, and he's always candid, and he said I would have called them a liar. I would have never believed, ever that we would have gone 1-11. Yeah. So that's kind of, I think a lot of KU players were wearing it in different ways. Some of them that we talked to looked a little relieved that it was over and they can focus on the off season, and some of the players still looked, pretty upset that they, endured that, and that, David Beatty said he expects to win every dadgum game. Well, the line for this game was 41 points, and I think the outcome was, 41 or 42 points in the final spread. So, that's a scenario where perception equaled reality, and he always likes to talk about the difference between those two. So, I just think we're entering a much different offseason than we were last year with KU football, and
absolutely,
and almost the exact 180 inverse of just a complete flatlining of fan enthusiasm. But they're going to have, I guess, the buzz didn't do them any good this year, so maybe having absolutely no buzz around them this year will help. Who knows?
Yeah, having to come together while on an 11-game losing streak, carrying that in to next season throughout the off season. So much different, like you say, than getting the one Big 12 victory last year in their last home game against Texas. So yeah, we'll see what the rebuilding project takes for next year with Kansas at K-State. Another bowl game, but moreover from that, a thrilling finish to the game against Iowa State, and Skylar Thompson plays a key role in that. To me, playing beyond his years as a freshman, but playing much differently than he did in the first three quarters, too, to engineer the comeback.
Well, exactly. He did a great job, but I don't know if they were just conservative with the play calling early, trying to put him in positions to keep things close. But, the last two drives, they just turned him loose. And the kid, that final drive, 87 yards in a minute 55, 10 plays, completed his first four passes in there. I can't remember the last time I saw a K-State two-minute offense move that quickly, that rapidly, with such confidence, and just turn this kid loose and let him go to work.
Yeah, and go to receiver. Zach Reuter had 2 catches on the season going into that. He gets bang 2 in a row that get him downfield and into Iowa State territory, and then Kansas State manages to pull it out with a sandlot play as time expired. It really doesn't get any more exciting than that, and this is a team that's played virtually everyone close except for TCU and pulled out a win, did so in another game down at Texas Tech, held on to a victory at Oklahoma State, has 4 wins in 5 games going into the bowl destination. Where do we maybe figure they'll go. Obviously, the result from the Big 12 championship game has a lot to do with that.
Right. I think the general consensus right now is Liberty Bowl in Memphis against Missouri. I mean, that's kind of, unless something surprising happens. If TCU beats Oklahoma, I don't know if they would both get in a Year 6 bowl or not. That would be tough. It would definitely knock Oklahoma out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, but I think most consideration, I mean, the Camping World Bowl in Orlando is a consideration. I think they're in a pretty good position right now with maybe a choice between K-State and Iowa State. Both teams are going to travel well. K-State's never played a bowl game in Florida. That game is in Orlando. But I think generally right now, even though K-State went to Memphis 2 years ago, a matchup with Missouri there, I think that would pack the stadium. And Memphis or Liberty Bowl was the only representative at the game last Saturday. So, and they're looking at Iowa State also. But I think that's kind of the general consensus right now.
I think it should be our mission before the bowls start to study all of them, and we can all figure out what our favorite name is for the bowl this year, and go through that extensive list.
The ones the first few days are usually the most sketchy. I think.
Yeah, the Dollar General Bowl might be my favorite.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of the Popeyes Bahamas Bowl. If you can go to the Bahamas, sit on the beach, and eat spicy chicken, doesn't get much better than
That's
that.
the life.
Yeah, that is. So maybe that'll get into the Big 12 rotation here at some point. So, Ken, what do you think? I mean, this season to me for K-State was still a disappointment. How do you factor in the ending, the way Skylar Thompson came on? I wonder how they'd have been all year if Skylar Thompson had been the quarterback, but would he have survived if they'd have used him in the quarterback run game? I also think, I wonder how they'd have done had Jesse Ertz managed to stay healthy the entire year. But how do you factor in the late surge into what was, really a disappointing season, given the prospects K-State had going into this year?
Well, it's kind of become a tradition to finish strong. The previous 2 years, they won their last 3 games to get a bowl eligible. This year, they won 4 out of the last 5, losing West Virginia. Again, part of it is the schedule. Admittedly, they played their toughest games early in the season. But down the stretch, they beat Oklahoma State, which is a quality win on the road. So, I guess you owe to Bill Snyder's thing, keep improving every day, game to game. But a lot of it, I think, was Skylar Thompson coming in. And we've heard about him from players on this team for 2 years. Mm-hmm. Not only his talent, but his leadership, his moxie, his mojo, what he does in the huddle. Alex Barnes, the running game got going a little better. I think the offensive line progressed later in the year. Alex Barnes got a little healthier to help him. But, this team just found a way to do it. I mean, I think some leaders stepped up, Dalton Reisner in particular. Brogan Berry is a guy from Topeka that doesn't play a lot except special teams, but everyone always talks about him on that team. Skylar Thompson pointed him out. Trent Tanking. I think this senior class, they didn't want to be the one to in that bowl streak.
Right.
That's a lot of motivation right there, too.
It seems to me that this was a team that really maybe flatlined after that Vanderbilt loss, because that was certainly one that shook their confidence, right. I thought, to some degree early in the season, and then got back some of that confidence probably with the way they won the game at Texas Tech and figured out a way to do that, and then was able to bounce back, and we'll see what happens in a bowl game and who they draw and also what kind of fan following they have, because a ton of fans went to the game at Vanderbilt, and obviously were disappointed after that trip, and now possibly another trip into Tennessee looms for them again. So
where they just went 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't think you can ever discount the importance of the Bobcat too this season.
Well, that's true.
Yes.
Phil's been a major contributor here. He's even got his own Twitter account. So,
I think an interview is due with Phil. So
I think there are some athletes that I've talked to that would be worse interviews than Phil.
Probably so.
Not going to drop names.
No, not yet. Basketball, the Jayhawks last night, again, just destroying an overmatched mid-major opponent that came into Allen Fieldhouse doing so quickly and did so when Toledo shot 55% in the first half and hit 7 3-pointers.
Right.
But 14 turnovers and just 5 rebounds. Of course, how many rebounds are were to grab with KU shooting 75%, in the first half, and Devontae Graham coming out and really getting into his offensive flow, and he had sort of struggled with his scoring, although he's been a major factor with distributing the ball.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew Devontae Graham was capable of this. This isn't like a freshman or a sophomore we haven't seen before, but a career-high 35 points. He went 14 of 19 from the field, part of a KU attack that at one point in the first half was shooting 72%. I don't know how you feel about this. These first halves are just blowing me away. I mean, Bill Self used the term shell shock to describe how Toledo might have felt because, anytime you make, 7 of 12 three-point attempts in the first half, you'd figure that's good enough to be in the game, but I think they were down 29 or 28 or something at the half. It was just absolutely remarkable. It seemed like KU couldn't miss and Toledo couldn't stop turning it over. There was one sequence where Devontae Graham threw a lob to Udoka Azubuike. He dunked. Toledo turned it over on the other side. LaGerald Vick threw a lob to Udoka Azubuike. He dunked. The Toledo turned it over on the other end. I mean, it was like Toledo turnover, KU 3 or dunk. Toledo turnover, KU 3 or dunk. It was insane. There was, I think, the either way you want to look at it, 32-3 or 30-2 stretch that they went on was one of the most remarkable I've ever seen live. I mean, there are different ways that they're doing it in these first halves, and the "We Want Tian" chant for Chris Tian started with 15 plus minutes left. So there's only so much you can do in the second half when you're putting in your freshman walk on. With that, it took him a little bit longer to get in the game, but still, I mean, they're taking the foot off the gas in the second half. So I think the true representation of this team is the first half, and you have to look at the level of opponent. I know that's something you and I talked about yesterday. They haven't played anyone really other than Kentucky that you would consider a marquee opponent.
Right.
They are playing Syracuse on Saturday, which is going to be a good test. I think Syracuse might be receiving votes in the poll. I'm not sure they're not ranked, but so that'll be a good test for KU on a neutral floor. But it's this is a skill set that doesn't diminish. Shooting, not turning the ball over again. Devontae Graham had no turnovers. He had 5 assists, 5 rebounds too. This is a team up and down. Another great game for Svi Mikhailuk. Malik Newman had maybe his best game as a Jayhawk, 7 for 10 shooting, 17 points. So, I mean, the ball is going to go in the hole with KU, and this is a game that started out kind of a little tight, and you wondered, Udoka Azubuike and Mitch Lightfoot both picked up a foul in their first minute. Is that going to be a problem going forward? Well, they didn't pick up another foul the rest of the first half, from what I remember. So, this was just another grotesque offensive display, I guess, in a positive way for the Jayhawks. And I guess what were your big takeaways from it?
Well, I was left, the only intrigue that was left in the second half was how long the 101-year-old fan would stick around.
Yeah.
One, and two, how long would Devontae Graham match Toledo in scoring, because he was actually doing that in the second half. And, it's just pretty fascinating to watch that. Otherwise, it was just another complete annihilation by KU. Now, how they do when competition steps up, we'll see.
Yeah, Kevin can attest to how disappointed I was that KU didn't reach the century mark for the 101-year-old fan. I wrote about today at hawkzone.com. I had to go delete, because I think they put in their backups, and as many backups as they have, and they're trying in a 6'7" KU football tight end to kind of see if they can get some practice depth at least out of that. But they put in their walk-ons, and the scoring just screeched to a halt. So I had to work my lead a little bit differently, but it's such is the life of a journalist. Having gone through the West Virginia comeback last year, there's nothing that's going to need to be reworked in my life as much as that. So
attempting that, seeing what that walk-on brings, that's mostly for practice purposes, and then just to get another big body in there in practice, and not having to have some of these guys like Clay Young defending the post on the scout squad.
Yeah, it could be, or it could be another guy that if worse comes to worse, there is literally no downside for KU in this situation. It's a situation where if you need a guy to come in and foul or get a few rebounds, maybe you could see him a couple minutes here and there. It's not. It's just a situation with the Billy Preston situation remaining, I guess, unsolved, I guess, as they continue to look into a vehicle he was driving on campus. And I think more and more people are thinking the longer this goes, the I guess more bleak the outlook is for Billy Preston. And then the Silvio D'Souza trying to reclassify. Bill Self said, best case scenario this week, if that were to happen, he'd be available and ready to contribute in the Texas game, which is the season opener, the last game they play before the New Year's, or the Big 12 opener. So, they need bodies right now. I mean, they're going to have a situation where Udoka Azubuike and Mitch Lightfoot are both in foul trouble. And right now you're looking at Clay Young as your 5 if that's the case. And that's just not going to cut it for KU. So they need some kind of contingency plan. And this is a kid that averaged, I think, close to 20 points and about 12 rebounds last year at a community at college level. So, I mean, he's not a complete scrub, but it's not like they're just pulling, saw some, 6'7" guy walking around campus and pulled him. But, it's somebody that I wouldn't, put your expectations too high for. But it's also somebody that, can absolutely give KU just a kind of a safety blanket.
Well, I think this situation, though, really helps in Udoka's development because he can't foul. I mean, he's got to play extended minutes, and, there's just no getting around that, really. And I think really that's a good thing to see for him, and it'll be interesting to see how then he responds when Kansas is able to add some depth up front, and who knows if Billy Preston's sitting somewhere other than the spot he's occupied on the bench.
Maybe not in the driver's seat of a vehicle anytime soon, but I think it's just important to note that I think there's going to be a team this year that comes in with their number one game plan, coaxing Udoka Azubuike into fouls. I mean, we haven't seen that yet, but you can do that. That was his first foul. It was kind of coaxed. It was an offensive foul. I think one of maybe 10,000 in the first half of that game. But I mean, there's going to be a team that coaxes him into it, and he's done a good job of avoiding it so far, playing with his head and his feet as opposed to his hands, as Bill Self says. But it's just definitely a situation where there's no margin for error.
Ken, before we get into another rugged opponent at home for the Wildcats in 1-6, Oral Roberts with a win over Avila. Let's look back at that Vegas tournament, and first off, the game against Arizona State I thought was wildly entertaining and high scoring, and Kansas State with a chance to win it at the end. And we see Arizona State's undefeated, now ranked 20th. Going to be visiting KU on Sunday the 10th. But what'd you make of those two games in that tournament? Because we saw Kansas State against some better competition.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think a lot of people expected K-State to beat Arizona State. They're still kind of a building program, but didn't know if they could keep up with them offensively. It's hard to say in a 92-90 game that K-State played pretty good defense, but they did. I mean, they held Arizona State's two guards in check pretty much. I mean, the kid gets 11 against K-State, goes for 43 the next day against Xavier. So Barry Brown can play some defense. But Brown and Kamau Stokes both played very well. I think after you lose to Arizona State, you're a little disappointed. But then you see what Arizona State does the next day to Xavier, whips them pretty good. An Xavier team that bounced back and beat Baylor last night. So I think they came away feeling a little better about themselves. Disappointed, of course, because you look after you lose to Arizona State and what they do to Xavier, you think, what could we have done? But, matchups are always different, so you don't know how that plays out. But, it's still a team that's trying to figure some things out, rebounding, some bench strength they need. The four veterans are playing very well. Stokes, Brown, Dean Wade, Xavier Sneed. I think, if they can get about 60 points a game between those guys and then get another, 15, 20 points off the bench with the way they play defense, I think this can be a pretty good team.
Yeah, and be interesting. I mean, we're still kind of looking from afar, obviously, at all these Big 12 teams and trying to get a gauge on them, and that's going to change, too, quite a bit in this next month before we get into conference play. So, we'll see where Kansas State kind of lines up in that mix. Where are they potentially going to be tested again in non-conference?
Don't know. Well, I don't know if they will. They play Oral Roberts tonight. Sunday they go to Vanderbilt, which you look as a good road test. Vanderbilt's 2-4 right now, I believe. So they have Tulsa and Wichita next Saturday. Tulsa's, I haven't checked their record lately, but I know they were off to kind of a rough start. So really, the non-conference schedule was set up pretty good for a young team to get some confidence. I mean, again, that's kind of what Bruce Weber wanted to do, knowing he was going to have a young team working in some new people. So, and that's going to hurt them, because their strength of schedule when you get down into tournament time is really going to take a hit.
Yeah. kind of looking from afar too at the situation at Tennessee. What do you make of this mess? And gosh, what's going to happen when Mike Gundy got involved yesterday? It kind of perked our ears a little bit again. And Gundy, known as being somewhat of a flirt in the college business for looking at different jobs, and he stayed at Oklahoma State for a long time, both as an assistant and head coach after playing quarterback there. And again, I think he made the right move, and that's not even going into the situation in Tennessee and John Curry. I just think, he's built up enough capital at Oklahoma State that it's a good situation for him.
Yes, well, that's twice he's teased Tennessee, thinking they had him.
Right.
They thought they had him 4 years ago too, when they hired Butch Jones. So maybe he just likes the color orange. I don't know. So, but yeah, it's a mess there.
Lighter shade.
As you pointed out in your musings today, K-State people were always worried about what was going to happen if John Curry had to hire a football coach there. I think maybe we're kind of seeing it, and and I think it's a tough situation. Just on the surface, I don't think Greg Schiano was that bad of a hire, but it's just the backlash. The Tennessee fans, I think they're only going to be happy if they get John Gruden. I think that's the only way you're going to appease them. So I don't know where they go next. If they go to T. Martin, the quarterback who replaced Peyton Manning and led him to a national title, actually. I believe he's offensive coordinator at USC. But, yeah, it's just a messy situation for there. And, it's going to be interesting to see how John Curry survives that. If that was his call alone or if other people, the chancellor and board of regents and big boosters had a part in that, agreement with Greg Schiano as well.
Yeah.
It's certainly not a job I would want with the hysteria the fans showed on
No.
social media. And then people forget the build-up to Butch Jones being fired. I mean, signs everywhere, fire Butch Jones, social media camp. I mean, this is not a job I would ever want with that fan base.
Well, no, and that's rampant around the SEC. I mean, it happened at Arkansas. It happened at Florida. It's that's life in the SEC.
The expectations, in my opinion, are too high for what the reality of what Tennessee is right now.
Yeah, they are, and I think we're seeing those kind of expectations though at a lot of college jobs, and as the money escalates, there's even more pressure and to win, and it's just it's tough. It really is. There can only there's one winner and one loser in each game, and so building is tough, and I'm saying that while watching Kansas
have the most patience in college football.
Retain its coach. Yeah. So
I hope Nick Saban isn't in trouble if he doesn't make the college football playoffs this year. I mean, 1 year out of it. He lost to the championship last year. If he doesn't even make it this year, boy, that's a downhill trend. So watch out, Nick.
It is. Who you guys got in the Big 12 championship game? Oklahoma and TCU on Saturday.
I think I've got Oklahoma. It's knowing the Big 12 and how things have gone the last few years, the immediate expectation is to think TCU would win and win on a last-second field goal and just screw the pooch for everybody. But I think Oklahoma is one of the finest teams in the country, so I think they'll win pretty easily.
Yeah,
I do too. I think Oklahoma, but boy, I'd be scared to death going up against a Gary Patterson defense for the second time in a couple weeks.
That's where I'm going. Because I wouldn't want to face Gary Patterson and what he can do a second time. I think TCU's really struggled offensively here and might not have the firepower to do it, but it would not surprise me at all if TCU pulled this, and mainly Big 12 factor too, and seeing this extra data point added, and it does them harm. Yeah. So, well, anyway, that does it for this week. We thank you for tuning in, and we'll get after it next week again for you here, and we'd like for you to like our Hawk Zone and Cat Zone pages, Facebook and Twitter. So thanks for watching. Take care.